Buenos días, clase, y bienvenidos a la próxima sección de nuestros estudios. We are now ready to begin our next unit in our grammatical study, and for this I want to direct you to our haiku page. You will see that I am in tercer trimestre, la gramática, and in section 3.3, los mandatos. For some of you, this will be your first time learning about this topic, and for others, you may have gotten a brief introduction to it last year in Spanish too. Los mandatos are known as commands. It is very important to note from the start that commands are without a doubt one of the most important functions in the Spanish language. They have daily use because commands are used to tell one person or group of people what to do or what not to do. What I want to do quickly is guide you through the information you see here on your haiku page to help you understand a little more. So, as you see here at the top, I have three general categories of mandatos. Number one is mandatos familiares. Familiar commands are directed toward anyone you would address as tú. These are very common commands because this is what one friend may say to another, what a parent may say to a child, what a teacher may say to a student. It is a command that is given to someone you are very familiar with. Número dos, el formal. This is for any one person or group of people that would be addressed as usted or ustedes. When we're talking about a command in usted, that would be, for example, a student addressing a teacher, any individual addressing someone they have just met, or addressing somebody in a higher position, and so forth. Ustedes is for any group of people. You will notice that I have used ustedes with you all year long. For example, when I say, chicos, por favor, saquen los libros, I just used a command. And lastly, número tres, nosotros. This is a command that equates to more or less the let's do this, and so on and so forth. That'll be our last section to discover, but first we really want to explore the familiar and the formal. The next item of importance is that for every type of command, there are two basic types. Afirmativo and negativo. Afirmativo is when you are telling some person or a group of people to do something, while the negativo is to not do something. Obviously, any mandato in the negativo is preceded with no. So, how are these commands formed? We can scroll down and take a little better look. We will begin with the mandato familiar. So, once again, I explained very briefly the type of people you would use this command for: family, friends, and once again, noting that there is the affirmative and the negative. But look very carefully. This command form has a different form depending on if you are using it in the affirmative or the negative. Look here. In the affirmative, the command would look very much like the third person singular in the present tense. In other words, the form that would go with él, ella, usted. Whereas the negative form corresponds to the second person in the subjunctive, in other words, for tú. Look here below. I have the example of the verb correr. If you are giving an affirmative command, it looks just like the third person present. Corre. So for example, if perhaps you are at a sporting event and you hear someone yell, corre, corre, that is a command telling the person to run. However, the negative form is the subjunctive form. So for example, perhaps you might hear a teacher yelling to a student in the hallway, no corras, no corras, don't run. For some of you who were exposed to the commands last year, this may have been the first time you saw a subjunctive form. So once again, affirmative looks like the present tense in the él, ella, usted form, whereas the negative is in the subjunctive. Here I have another example with tomar. Affirmative is toma, whereas the negative is no tomes. Down here, escribir, the affirmative is escribe, with the negative no escribas. Of course, there are some irregulars that we do need to be aware of. And I've listed some of the more common here below because these verbs are very much used in the command form. For example, decir, in the affirmative, di, whereas the subjunctive form for the negative is no digas. Really, the irregular form comes out in the affirmative. The negative forms you have seen before in the subjunctive study. Hacer, haz, for affirmative, no hagas for negative. Ir, ve, with no vayas for the negative. Poner, affirmative, pon, with negative, no pongas. Salir, sal, in the affirmative, no salgas in the negative. Ser, sé, in the affirmative, no seas in the negative. Tener, ten in the affirmative, no tengas in the negative. Venir, ven in the affirmative, no vengas in the negative. So, just to give you a little background, many of you may have heard some of these commands used before without knowing it. For example, maybe you have heard someone say, oye, ven aquí, come here. Or someone saying, no te vayas, don't go, please don't go. I'm going to scroll down, and now I'm going to do the mandato formal. This is for usted or ustedes. Now, there is a very unique difference here. In the familiar commands, we saw that the affirmative and the negative forms each had their different form. In the formal, it is subjunctive in both the affirmative and the negative. So, in that regard, it does make the formal commands a little less tricky because you do not have to worry about changing the form from affirmative to negative. Here I use the same examples of regulars, correr, tomar, and escribir. You will see corra, corran, or no corra, no corran. Those match up with the subjunctive forms for usted or ustedes. Same with tomar, tome, tomen, no tome, no tomen. Escribir, escriba, escriban. No escriba or no escriban. Are there irregulars? Well, there are no special irregulars. It all depends on what the form is of that verb in the subjunctive. Last, we have the mandato of nosotros, and here, once again, very similar to the formal command, it is a subjunctive for both affirmative and negative. Here, the one part that is different is that a nosotros command obviously is used only in the nosotros. But you will see in the examples of correr, tomar, and escribir, the command form is the nosotros form in the subjunctive. Just to give you an idea what this command would sound like in English, for correr, let's run, let's not run. Or escribir, let's write, or let's not write. If you were to rank the use and the commonality of these commands, we are definitely going to focus on the informal and the formal first. We will get to nosotros at the end. Now, obviously, pronouns are used with commands, and we will go over that after. In the meantime, if you would like to view this information on your haiku page in a printer-friendly format, please scroll down and click aquí for a version in Word. Gracias, chicos, y nos vemos lunes.